So our presenter today is Natalie Cummings, and we're going to be talking about setting up a testing center. So I will send that over to you, Natalie, to go ahead and introduce yourself and get going.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I'm going to go, let me get myself into slideshow mode here. You should be seeing my screen where it says demystifying GED testing centers.
Yes, looks good.
Awesome. Excellent. Okay, great. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Yes, my name is Natalie Cummins. I am with Pearson VUE, and let me see if I can advance the slide. Okay. Why are you not advancing? Hang on a second. All right, now we're advancing. All right, so that is me. I am I'm Client Channel Operations Manager with Pearson. I need to take off that view. My role is to be a liaison between GED Testing Service, which is the client in that title, and you all, or anybody who wants to set up a testing center, and the Pearson side of things, which is the channel part. There are a lot of teams that do work on setting up onboarding testing centers for GED testing, as well as for the other hundreds of clients that we have at Pearson. And so there are a lot of people who have their hands in this process, and sometimes it's not quite clear who you should be talking to for what issue. So that's why I am here. I've been in this role for a little over 3 years. Prior to that, I was GED administrator for Kentucky, and my whole career actually dating back to the late 1900s, which is a funny way to say it, but that's what people have been saying lately. I've been in adult education for all that time, in the classroom, in administrative roles, at state administration, and GED administrator. So I love this field, and I am so happy and grateful to be able to continue to help people achieve their goals. All right, so moving on. So let's talk about what we'd like to learn today. I'd like you to understand the GED and Pearson roles regarding testing centers. It can be a little confusing sometimes, where the differentiation might be. I'd like you to understand the requirements to become a GED testing center. What are the differences between fixed and mobile sites? What are the different stages of the approval process? And then answer any additional questions. This looks like a fairly small group, so I'm not going to stand on ceremony here. If you have a question as we're going along, please feel free to put it into the chat. I'm going to empower my colleague from GED Testing Service, Lisa, who's here, to look at the chat, and if there's something that we need to address in the moment, I'd rather do that. Or you can even unmute yourself and ask your question that way. All right, let's talk about some background. So GED Testing Service is the creator of the GED exam. Right now, the test is delivered in 48 states. Pearson is the technology partner for GED. So we have the software that is used to deliver the GED test via computer. We do this for, like I said, hundreds of clients. We have a very robust and secure testing system that a lot of clients trust for their high stakes exams. If you're going to become a site that delivers the GED test via computer, then you basically become a Pearson VUE Test Center or PVTC. To go through that process, you have to submit an application, and you go through installation. There's some other onboarding steps that we will talk about. I'm going to send a copy of these slides after we're finished for distribution to everybody who was here, and there are links that will be included in these slides, but you can always go to GED.com and click on the Educators and Admins button in the upper right-hand corner, And that's the area where you will go to find all kinds of information. If you're not already going there, definitely do that. Once you do that, go to administrators and then click on Become a Testing Center. This is the new link. I made sure of that. They did a redesign of the GED website, so a few links kind of needed to be redone. So there's a lot of information when you go here, and I encourage you to go just kind of look around. All right, let's get into some of the basics. So there are different types of testing centers. We have fixed, that's where the computers stay in one place, like you would expect. And within the category of fixed, we have public and we have private. So public sites are those sites where students can self-schedule. They go into their GED account, they are ready to take their social studies test, and they look for test centers in their area where they can take that exam. Private sites are not open. They are not visible in a GED account. So a test center has to schedule those students. Public sites are great because they serve the community and anybody can schedule there. Private sites are great because they can be tailored to serve only your population, your students. It all kind of depends on what your situation is, if you're going to be public or private. Mobile sites are computers that move around to different locations. So you have a set of laptops that you would pack up and take to a, let's say, a library or a job center or a business, or another adult education program where you can set that up as a little local area network. You deliver your exams, and then you tear everything down and you take it back to its home base or to the next testing location. Corrections can be either fixed or mobile, and that is designed to serve justice involved or those who are adjacent to justice involved. So basically, those persons who don't have access to the internet, for example, for their email account and have to be scheduled directly via an adult education program or via the test administrator. And it looks like Utah has a good mix of all of these. I realize this is a complicated diagram to just look at for a minute, but I did want to include this. This is from the technology requirements document, which is linked here in these slides. And it just shows the testing center setup for GED testing. At the bottom of this slide, you will see an administration laptop. That's really the brains of this operation. That is where you will download most of the testing system. That laptop needs to be connected to a signature pad and a camera for admitting your candidates, unless you're in corrections. And then it also has to be connected to a laptop to a printer so that you can print out your schedule. It says print out for candidate score reports. The GED score report is basically just a piece of paper that says go check your GED account. So not necessarily that, but you can also print out candidate agreements and things like that. So this is just kind of a little diagram of what it looks like that your administration laptop is connected directly to these testing laptops, the exam delivery laptops. 4 are shown. You don't have to have 4. You can have a testing center with 1 test taker laptop. You don't have to have more than that. But if you have more than 15, then you get into some other issues with needing a server and things like that. So fixed testing centers can be GED only, which means that out of the whole suite of Pearson VUE tests, you can say, hey, I'm really only interested in the GED test. Or you can be what we call a full PVTC, and then you would offer the GED exam and a whole bunch of other computer-based certification exams.
Natalie, there is a question.
Yes.
So John asked, can we set up both a fixed site and a mobile? We want a fixed site, but do serve a corrections group of youth in our district and see the benefit of a mobile.
Absolutely. That is a fantastic question. Yes, you can have a fixed site and then you can create a series of mobile sites off of that fixed site. But yes, that's very common actually. That's a very common situation where you have a fixed site and then that same organization creates a corrections mobile site to go into, juvenile or county jail or something like that. So yes, you can absolutely do that. Great question. The GED only requirements are a little more relaxed. So we're gonna get into that a little bit here. So I mentioned that mobile testing is a set of testing computers that you can take to a remote location to do GED testing. Mobile testing centers are usually created as satellites of existing fixed testing centers, John, like the example that you're talking about. But it is very possible these days to create a mobile testing center that is not tethered to a fixed site. What I'm calling mobile only or freestanding mobile, that kind of thing. That does require an exception from GED testing service, but it's becoming a lot more common. I just had a call this week about creating a mobile only site for a program in another state. Very, very common to do that now. Also, still, mobile testing is most commonly used to serve jails, but the percentage of mobile sites that serve the public has been increasing for the last few years as I've been sounding this drumbeat to do more mobile testing. Costs, I know costs are always a concern for adult education. There's a lot of this that is free. So the application is free, our software is free, and the test administrator certification is also free. You are responsible for any of the other hardware, the computers, the laptops, printer, other peripherals that you might need in order to deliver the test. You would be responsible for that, but you might already have that equipment. The other thing that you would need to buy is what we call the Enhanced Security Protocol or ESP kit. It costs about $450 as a flat rate from us, from Pearson, but in the technology requirements document, we give you all the model numbers. So if you can find them for cheaper, I always encourage you to save that money. You can definitely do that. And I should note that you do not need that security kit for corrections testing. The security kit is only for testing outside of corrections. Non-corrections test centers receive channel compensation. So this is a portion of each test taker's exam fee. I double checked, I looked this up. Utah is on standard compensation. So standard compensation is $5 for each scheduled hour of testing per test taker. We say that this evens out to about $10 per exam because of course, the RLA exam is 2.5 hours versus, I think social studies is the shortest one. So it's like 80 minutes. So it's going to be, you're going to see different amounts, but it averages out to about that much. If you choose to become a full PVTC, if you choose to deliver other tests from Pearson VUE, be aware that those exams have their own compensation structure. So you would you'd have to ask your sales manager to guide you through that process, and they would let you know what kind of compensation you could expect to get from those other exams. There are some key differences if you're looking at just delivering the GED. So laptops are allowed. If you deliver other exams, you have to have a desktop. The test administrator for computer for a GED only site can also be a laptop. That isn't a standard exception, but it has to be locked down to the administrator's desk when GED testing is occurring. And there's a link here that you will receive. Lockable storage is also recommended. It's not necessarily required for GED only, but you really do have to have a secure way of storing students' personal items. That's really just good practice for anything. You are also allowed to have temporary desktop partitions if you are in a cramped space and you cannot accommodate the 4 feet between test computers, then you can have a temporary desktop partition. There are some size requirements, which I'd be happy to talk to you about. There's no minimum number of hours per week or month that you need to be open for testing. And GED testing service can make some other exceptions on a case-by-case basis, kind of dependent upon your situation. We recognize that a lot of GED testing, especially GED only testing, is delivered by adult education programs that often have very unique buildings or, unique resource issues. So we do we really want you to be able to deliver the test. So even if you think, oh gosh, I have this situation and they're never ever going to say yes, it doesn't hurt to ask. Ask me and Lisa. We'll talk with the state, and sometimes we can make those exceptions. We want to talk you through how to make this a reality. And then this is a slide with just links to, there are 2 different sets of technical requirements. There's the one for GED only, which focuses on using laptops. And then there's the one for full PVTC, which is focused on using desktops. And for both of those, I do say have your IT staff review. That's just kind of a basic first step before you apply, or if you're thinking about applying, is those documents are available. Run them by your IT people, just to, flag any potential concerns before you apply, before you get the link to the software, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh no, we can't do this. We'd like to avoid that heartache for everybody.
There's another question in the chat.
Sure.
Christopher wants to know, how does locking the administration laptop to the desk work in a mobile testing site that moves inside a correctional facility?
That's a great question. Really, you just have to, I think it's just the locking thing I'm talking about is just like a cable, right? So you just have to, I think it's just a cable, like you can lock it to a table leg or something like that, really just so it doesn't walk away. Does that answer the question, Christopher?
Perfect.
Oh, okay, good. Woohoo. All right. A few restrictions. These are mentioned also in the technology requirements. We don't support Macintosh hardware, so unfortunately it has to be Windows-based. Chromebooks are also not allowed. Hotspots are also not allowed for Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is one of those things that is prohibited except, and that except is if you're running the what we call the CCT software, which is cloud control technology. And I have some slides to talk about that later on. But the cloud option is something that we are very interested in more sites using. It is only available if you are GED only, but it's a nice way to use the software without having to worry about updates and things like that. We'll talk about that. Okay, a brief overview of the facility requirements. You have to have a testing room that is enclosed, quiet, free from distractions. I realize that free from distractions can be a bit challenging sometimes, like in a jail, but we do our best, right? You have to have a check-in desk outside of the testing room. That is really just a courtesy to people who might already be testing. You don't want to disturb them because the check-in process does it has a verbal component. And you need to get a digital photo and digital signature for each test taker, unless it's corrections. Here are examples of what your reception area might look like while candidates are waiting for their tests or waiting to be checked in. On the left is a professional center. On the right is a GED testing center in central Kentucky. So you can tell by the cinder block that it's an old school that is used for adult education. So you don't have to have a lot of fancy spaces here, just a place where people can sit and wait. And then the check-in area does have to have a space, and it's hard to see on the bottom because that's like a panoramic view. But the check-in area is just right next to the waiting area there at the bottom. And they do have, although you can't really see it in this picture, they have a blank wall, like a neutral colored wall where they can take people's photographs. You do have to have a safe spot to store student belongings. If you don't have a locker for each person, that's all right. You can, I've seen lockable backpacks are an option that is sometimes recommended. Or if you have a filing cabinet that can be repurposed to store student belongings, that would also work. Every workstation has to have about 4 feet of separation between the workstations, and that means between the computers, not just between not just from the middle of one to the middle of the other, but from edge of screen to edge of screen. If you can't accommodate that in your room, then you can use privacy dividers. And if you're GED only, again, they can be temporary. They don't have to be the expensive, like testing carols that you buy from an office supply. Here's an example of some lockers. If you're in a school, you might have leftover lockers that you can use. Sometimes you can get movable locking units that you can kind of move into place. Cubbies are not something that you would want to use because they're not secure. You want people to feel like, they have to leave their phone with you, things like that, keys, then you want that stuff to be safe. I do know that some testing centers kind of have their own extra policy on top of the standard Pearson policies, where they will tell test takers that you cannot bring anything of value into the testing center, that you have to leave it all in your car, and that you can really only bring in your ID. And that's fine. If you have that kind of policy, then that is fine. And it can make your life less complicated. On the left are those nice fancy testing carols that you can purchase if you have the money, right? You still have to have about 4 feet of workspace. Well, it's not quite 4 feet. It's listed in the facilities requirements. And I'm sorry, I'm not remembering exactly what that number is. But you do have to have enough space for somebody to spread out and like have the erasable note boards and the testing exhibits and things like that. Or you can set up your computers so that they are facing the wall. There's an appropriate amount of space between your testing stations. And in this example, on the right, the test administrator is in the testing room doing the proctoring from there. So that brings me to where you can be located. You can proctor GED testing from inside the testing room, which is probably the most common. But if space is at a premium, then the test administrator can monitor from outside using a video surveillance. So a camera set up high enough in the room so that you can see people's hands and keyboards. And then that video is fed into the administrator computer and you monitor from there. Some rooms still have a big glass window or a wall that you can look through and you can monitor that way. I think that's probably the least common, but it is an option. As long as you have a clear view of everybody, you're all right. The most important thing that we are looking for in approving test centers is to know that you are able to see everybody's hands on keyboards during testing. I do see this as an exception, a pretty common exception for GED only sites, where if the test administrators cannot see from like a seated position in the room, then GED says that's all right as long as they get up and they move around a certain number of times every 5 minutes or something like that, just to make sure that they're circulating and keeping an eye on people. The ratio is 1 test administrator for every 15 test takers. If you have a large testing center with more than 15 test takers, then you'll have to have another test administrator in the room. All right, before we get into the application process, are there any questions?
None in the chat.
All right, we're doing well. I'm going to keep forging on. So there are 5 broad areas to this process: the application, the site agreement, and a quality approval, software, test administrator cert, and then activation, and you begin testing. So let's break it down, and I'm not going to go into all the details because we don't want to be here forever, but I will go through some of the basics. The test administrator or so the test center completes a Pearson application. So the test center application is linked here. If there's a state-based application, then that also has to be completed. Pardon me, I do not remember if Utah has a state-based application. One of you all can jump in.
I do not believe so.
Okay, great. If so, that's no problem. Some states do. Pearson will contact the state relationship manager, that is Lisa. I get notified of an application. I ask Lisa, hey, is this okay? Lisa will get with the state and say, is this all right? Is this approved to move forward? And then once that approval from the jurisdiction is received, then we can move forward with all the other steps. The next thing that's going to happen is you'll get a site agreement. You'll want to review and sign that Pearson Test Center agreement. And if you are not in corrections and you're not mobile, then you have to submit digital photos of your test center. And those are the photos that prove to the channel quality team that your test center is up to our specifications. So once again, those photos are required only of fixed public and private, and that's it. If you are mobile or if you are corrections, we do not collect photos. I'm going to talk more about mobile here in a couple minutes. I had a link there to the photo checklist. A few tips that I'd like to emphasize. Please make sure you submit current pictures. They do pay attention to that because you have to submit photos of the outside of your building. And if it's the wrong season, if it's obvious that it's the wrong season, then they don't like that. Label your pictures as directed. The photo checklist document now is great because it includes sample pictures and they are labeled exactly how they want you to label your pictures. So just do that and you'll be great. If you've ever tried to sell a house, then you know that you want to stage your house to sell it, right? So you need to submit test day ready photos. You want to show it exactly how it's going to look for test day. If you're applying for GED exceptions, show the space as it would be used with those exceptions. And ideally, Lisa and I, would already know about those exception requests. You've already talked to us, we've had a conversation, and we say, yes, that's fine, and it's approved. In the photo checklist, it does talk about a special accommodations room. That is not required for GED testing sites, but if you have the ability to provide that, that's wonderful. Okay, moving on. You've been approved. Yay, you've been approved. You get a welcome email from one of the teams. It's called Channel Care, and it has lots of links in it. Please note that the email says that you have 30 days to install the software. So this is where it becomes important to remind you to have your IT people look at the technology requirements first before you apply, just to make sure that there are no surprises. And also, you might be sharing your IT people with other schools or other entities. And so if you can get on their list, right, to schedule them ahead of time for installation, that would also be great, just to keep things moving along. Your IT staff has to have full local admin rights to install the software. We do have a team called VSS, or View Support Services. They're available to troubleshoot if that's necessary. And if you do cloud-based software, then they are directly involved with the installation. It's at this point, when you get that email with all the links, you'll get included in that email is information about how to buy the security kit, which is 2 digital cameras and a digital signature pad. You can buy that from us, but I even say model numbers are available on page 6 of the technology requirements document. So if you can buy it separately, that's great. If you'd like to just buy it from us, wonderful. It's $450, and they give you a link. And it is just a one-time cost. So it's not like you have to buy it every year, which is good. So I've been talking a bit, sprinkling in stuff about the cloud, right? So we have 2 flavors of Pearson VUE testing software, or Pearson testing software. We have standard, which is where the test is loaded directly onto the testing stations. Standard software is used for mobile testing, pretty much only, that's the only option for mobile testing. And it can be used for fixed. But if you are in a fixed site that has good internet, like stable internet, I would highly suggest going the cloud route. And cloud, or CCT, is where we just basically put a link on the testing stations. The test remains in the cloud. It's delivered virtually. It looks exactly like you're testing there on the computer, but it is more secure, honestly, because the test never actually enters that computer. So if you decide to go the standard software route, then you install the software via the provided link. Your tech support is available, but it's not pre-scheduled. Periodically, you have to run those software updates. I know that we try not to, give you too many software updates during a year, but security is important, and we're constantly making sure that our software is secure. And like any software, updates come out. I mean, how many times do you have to update, the apps on your phone, right? So everything keeps getting updated. And you are responsible for that with standard software. If you have more than 15 test computers, then you need to have an additional server, and that's a physical server. It's costly. It's kind of a pain. That's if you have standard. There is a large advantage to standard software, and why it's very good for mobile testing, and that's because you can deliver the test offline. If you are going into a jail, for example, where you know there's no internet or the internet is only available in like one office, right? In that jail, then it's great that the standard software option exists, because then you can download the tests, deliver them, and then take all that stuff to some place where you do have internet and score it. You don't have to have a constant internet connection with the standard software. So cloud control technology, or CCT, is a little bit faster to install than the standard software because you schedule that ahead of time with VSS. CCT also functions as a server. So if you have a large testing center with more than 15 computers, then CCT is really, I think, a very strong option for you. Also, the main software updates are handled via the cloud, so you don't have to worry about doing those updates for the main testing software. You still have to update your delivery stations once in a while, but it's not nearly as intensive as the other updates. You do have to have constant, stable, reliable internet connections for CCT. And right now you can only be a GED testing center in order to go the CCT route. I'm going to pause there for just a second and see if there are any questions about the software, because I've thrown a lot of information out there.
On the chat, anybody can come off mute.
I've got
Actually,
a
I have a
question.
question. I'll ask it specifically. So I work with inside a correctional facility, and so CCT sounds great, and I really think I'd like to go that route, but I'd like to know what your recommendation is, given the fact that we would be mobile on laptops, but we have a pretty strong Wi-Fi connection, so I don't have too many concerns about it. What would your recommendation be?
I think that's something where I would want to connect with you offline and talk with my VSS go-to person, my VSS
Okay.
connection, and run that scenario past him and see what he says. Because I know of a couple of correction sites that are using CCT, but I think theoretically it can be used with a mobile site. It's just not something that is very common because mobile tends to go places where there's just not strong internet.
Right.
Yeah. So definitely, let's connect afterwards and we can talk about that in more detail.
Okay, sounds good.
And
Awesome, thank you.
sometimes we set up meetings with Wayne, who is
Yeah.
the specialist at that, and your IT people and the couple of us. So sometimes a few minutes or 20 minutes or half an hour of a meeting like that really clarifies things. Bringing
Okay.
your IT people in to talk with Wayne directly.
All right,
So let us
perfect.
know
Thank
if you
you.
want to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Was there somebody else who had a question?
Yes, I do. So our school uses Pearson, I believe, to administer like the ACT tests. So are we already a testing center? Like, how much more do we need to do to become a GED testing site?
So that's a great question. If you already have a Pearson testing center, which if you put the name into the chat, we can look that up on my spreadsheet. But an existing Pearson testing center can add the GED test very easily by going into Service Direct and creating a case to add a new client. It's basically requesting a new client authorization. And then it goes through a very short approval process. Basically, we go to GED, we go to the state, and we say, hey, can this site deliver the GED test? They say yes. Then the channel care team will send the physical things that are needed for GED testing, because the GED test requires a physical exhibits of the calculator reference and the formula sheet and the extended response guidelines. And then once you have those things, once it's confirmed that you've received those things, then we just flip a switch and turn on that client authorization. Yeah, that's done. That's pretty common. And if you'd like to double check whether you actually are a Pearson site already, you can drop the name in the chat and I can look at that later.
Yeah, he did. He did.
Good. Awesome. Well, we'll look into that for sure. Okay, great questions. The test administrator certification is the next phase. You have to have the software installed before you can take the certification exam, because the certification is really a test of using the systems. It is a question test, like, you know, it is ask you questions, but it's open book. In fact, Channel Quality even recommends, they're the people who are in charge of certification, and they say the best practice for taking the certification exam is to have the exam open on one computer and have another computer open to the Connect system, to the resources, and just have the resources available right there. You know, if you need to look up an answer, you can look up an answer. It's just right there. Once you get set up, you get into this phase, there's training documentation, there's video, there's text, there's a whole folder of resources for new test administrators. Again, that exam is free and you can take it as many times as you need in order to pass. You set your available testing hours, actually a little bit before this point, but you have to run your test, set up your testing hours. Even if you're going to be private, even if you're mobile or corrections, you have to put in some testing hours, because that's the only way. It's a little glitch in the system. It's the only way it knows that you are actually going to be open or ready to be activated. We schedule a welcome call with you to make sure. This is after you answer some other questions, and then you're activated, and then you can begin testing. All right, I have a few slides where I talk about mobile testing and why it's a great idea. So just real quick, this number is a few months old. I do apologize, I haven't had time to rerun the numbers, but we're moving up to almost a quarter of mobile testing centers around the country are non-correctional. When I started tracking this, I think it was like 17% of mobile testing centers were non-correctional. So it's moving on up. I like that. I like that. Across the country, this is a little bit out of date now, I think, but not much. This is the distribution of non-correctional mobile testing centers. So there's one in Utah, and you can see Arkansas has beaten everybody with 19, and Kentucky's a close second with 15. So there's room for growth all over the country with more non-correctional mobile testing centers to serve a wide variety of needs. What are those needs? Well, capacity, right? Every state has testing deserts. Testing deserts can be rural areas, or they can be actually urban areas as well. And we all know that our adult learner population has some unique needs. They are a unique population. They don't fit into really any other category. Our learners tend to have transportation issues. They tend to have a lot of issues around test anxiety, right? So the further that somebody has to travel, that increases the cost that they have to travel, the time that they might have to take away, take off work, as well as the courage of driving an hour to another test center and walking into a building that they've never been in before, and then taking a high stakes exam. So those are things that can all affect our test takers. Mobile testing does reduce the travel costs for students because you're taking testing to where they are. You can reduce the wait time for testing, which might increase the pass percentage. If somebody is ready to test, you want them to test now or as soon to now as possible, because the knowledge loss is real over time. So we want to get them tested as quickly as possible. Mobile testing gives you a very flexible testing schedule. You can do same-day testing. You can do testing at the end of a boot camp, for example, those kinds of things. Also, the tests may be delivered offline. And it is more reliable than online proctor testing. I'm not sure if online proctor testing is still available in Utah, but it is something that is just more, it is more reliable, just in terms of the technology. So setting up mobile testing is very much like setting up a fixed site. But before you apply, you have a couple of other things that you really need to think about. First off, think about where you want to do your testing. Where is testing needed? Do you have a service area of a certain number of square miles, for example, where you know that there are places where people just cannot get to a testing center? Are there partners that you can work with where you can go in once a week or once a month and set up testing just at that one particular location? Some ideas of those partners are libraries, schools, churches, businesses, any place that has a space that's suitable to meet the security requirements of GED testing. Because we still want you to deliver the exam as if you were in a testing center, right? You still have to have it set up securely according to our requirements. You also have to think about how you're going to cover the operating costs, because there are some additional operating costs to think about with mobile testing. Their one-time costs are the ESP kit, which is the digital cameras and digital signature pad, not applicable for corrections. Portable storage if you don't have storage available wherever you're going to do your testing. Laptops if you need to buy those. You might already have them. And then extra monitors, keyboards, and mice, because you do have to have an external mouse, a wired mouse for every station. It's nice to have extra keyboards because not everybody likes a laptop keyboard. And sometimes you need an extra monitor, a big monitor, if somebody has a font accommodation that they need a bigger monitor for. Recurring costs would be your test administrator salary, and then any mileage for travel, if that's something that you reimburse, or you might have, if you're with a college, you might have a school van or a vehicle or something like that. So everybody's situation is different. Some people reimburse, some don't. Some people will hire a part-time person. Some will just assign the testing duties to somebody who's already employed, or you might get a volunteer. I mean, that is allowable. You'll want to think about private funding sources, alternate grant opportunities that cover these costs. The most popular ones are like Dollar General and United Way. Those are the ones that I've heard of being used most for mobile testing. The application is not available via the standard website. You do have to contact channel sales for that. Actually, you can contact me or Lisa, and we will put you in touch with channel sales to get to the application. If you already have an existing test center, then we just have you sign an addendum. If you don't have an existing fixed testing center, then you'll have to sign the full site agreement. But again, that's becoming more and more common. You complete a questionnaire. Rather than submit photos, you complete a questionnaire. And this disclaimer at the bottom is that your fixed site needs to be in operation for 3 months prior to adding mobile testing. However, I've seen that exception granted before, and I've even seen fixed and mobile applications going through the pipeline at the same time. So, I mean, this is just like, I just kind of have to put this disclaimer in at this point. The questionnaire asks you to describe the following, and I don't need to go through all of these because you will get these slides and we're running short on time, but just be aware that you'll get this information ahead of time. And as a review of the equipment you need, you're going to need your laptops, testing administrator, I will say, if you already have a fixed center, unfortunately, you cannot use those fixed center laptops for mobile testing. They have to be different. And that's because every testing center has a unique site ID. And so the software that we give you is pretty much coded to that site ID. And so that's why you just can't share them. And then security kit, other peripherals, storage, and then how to transport those laptops and peripherals, which we're not going to dictate how you do that. It's very much whatever system you can work out. Some people use like totes from Costco. Some people have the money to buy the nice, laptop cases or something, whatever works. Same as with fixed testing. After you get the site ID, you get a link to download and install the software, and you have to have local admin rights in order to do that. And just as a reminder, the main advantage for mobile testing, especially when you're on the go to lots of different places, is that you can deliver the test offline. And then this is just a very brief overview of how you deliver the test offline. I do say that it's really ideal that if you download the test, you need to upload those scores, deliver the test and upload the scores within 24 hours. After 24 hours, the system gets very cranky and you have to call VSS and you have to get a special code in order to get this done. So just within 24 hours is ideal. You can have one testing computer, or you can have up to 15. I don't really recommend 15 for mobile testing because that is a lot to move around. But I will say that you can be authorized for more computers than you use for a testing session. So I was just talking, like I said, with a program, I think in Oklahoma yesterday, and we worked out the recommendation that they're going to apply for 10 testing computers, but they're probably only going to use 5 at a time, at least to begin with. So if you feel like you might expand and use more, maybe go ahead and apply for more if you have the money to go ahead, because you have to have the laptops to be able to download the software. But you don't have to deliver on 10 computers all the time, if that makes sense. Mobile testing is private by default. You set your own hours. Testing hours are not visible to test takers in their GED account. So you can be very flexible. You can be very responsive. You can do same-day testing. The test takers are registered directly in Registration Manager, which is one of the Pearson VUE testing systems. So if you know who's going to test ahead of time, that's great. But you can also do, and some programs do this, they say that they're going to be in a certain place on a certain day, and whoever shows up and is eligible to take the test gets registered to take the test. Your mileage may vary depending on what kinds of restrictions and requirements you have at your program. And this is just a review of a couple of links. So if you hadn't already gathered from hearing me talk about sales, quality, care, VSS, everybody, SRMs, CCOMs, this is a very large company, right? Pearson is a huge company, and we deliver tests all over the world. We have testing centers all over the world. So there is no one dedicated team to GED testing except me. I am absolutely dedicated to GED testing. So I am your face and name. When you're on the, you're looking for emails from a bunch of different teams, but sometimes you might not remember who you're supposed to talk to, right? You'll get an email and then you get another email and then you're like, whoa, wait a minute, I don't know what's going on. That's when you can ask me to look into it. And I know all these people on these teams, and I can check on things for you. I will also say that I'm really on a campaign to emphasize getting these applications through more quickly, getting the onboarding process done more quickly. Sometimes that's because the site has an issue where they're waiting on IT or they have to redo their photos or something like that. But sometimes we can be more responsive. So if you send us an email, if you send one of these teams an email, and let's say you don't hear anything for 5 business days, let me know. Let Lisa know. Let us both know. We will follow up because sometimes things get left, get forgotten or in the churn, and we don't want that to happen. We want to stay on top of this. So don't feel like you're bothering us. Please let us know if something feels like it's going too slow or if you're just confused about what you're supposed to do, because it is a very involved process. But the good news is once you get through it, you're done. You have to take the test administrator certification every year, but that's it. You're done. All right. Have I completely overwhelmed you?
That's good timing. Look at you.
I was looking at that clock on the bottom of my screen the whole time going, okay.
Tina, you want to come off mute and ask your question, or you want me to read it? She just put in.
I'm going to leave this
How?
up for just another minute so people can write this down if they want. But
Tina wants to know, how long is the process on average from starting the application to being operational? I'm wondering if we would be able to be a testing center before the end of May.
Oh, yes. Oh, gosh. Yes. I mean, how long it takes from application to activation is it's like the $1,000,000 question, right? I mean, it can vary wildly. It really depends on how quickly you can. Okay, let me back up. It depends on how much research you've done before you apply and how many, ducks you get in a row with your IT people and your technology and your facilities and all that before you apply. If you're ready to go when you apply, then things will go faster. If you apply and then suddenly realize your IT people are like, no, we can't do this without major reworking, then it's going to take a lot longer. But yes, I would say ideally the average is 3 months. But I've seen onboarding happen in 30 days. Because, you have to think about how, like I said, you're dealing with a multitude of teams over here. You deal with sales and they get you documentation and you get that back. And then you deal with quality and they have to approve things and they're reviewing applications from all over the country. So channel care has to do their things. So there's a lot of steps, but it can be done in a month. 3 months is comfortable.
And in a case where they might be just adding GED to already established site, that could be really quick.
That could be at the most 2 weeks, because what takes the longest is getting the GED exhibits to the site.
Yeah.
And verifying that they've received the necessary materials before they begin testing. I'm going to stop.
Okay, and we'll find out about that Joab High School. That's what someone wanted to know. Yeah.
And
JUAB.
okay.
It's pronounced Juab.
Joab. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I will. I wrote down your email, so I will look that up.
Well, we're at time. I really appreciate this, Natalie. Sounds like there's some people who might be interested in opening some new sites. So
Yeah.
we're excited to support that, especially if there's some rural areas out there or desert communities where there's some desert in testing. And, we really, really want to support the communities. So thank you,
Yeah.
Tina.